Alright, so in this lecture we'll be talking about operators, and in MQL4 we have basically 4 operators, type of operators, and these are the operators. We have the assignment operators. So let me list this out. Operators, right? So we have one, the assignment operators. Then we have the arithmetic operators. We have the arithmetic operators, metic. Okay, then we have the relational operators, then we have the logical operators, right? So logical operators. So now, what is assignment operators? So I'm very sure you're not new to this because we've been using assignment operators. We've been trying to assign one value to a variable and so on. So you already know what assignment operators is. For example, when we were trying to do something like maybe is citizen, is US citizen, something like that, for example, this maybe Josh, maybe, okay, let's say Josh, the moment you use a single equal to assign a value to a particular variable or to something, automatically you are doing an assignment, right? So you are assigning a value to a variable. That is an assignment. So let's say you declare here age, and later on you are here to assign. You are now trying to give it a value. This is an assignment. So you are trying to assign this to this. So that is simply an assignment. We've used this before and now you are getting to understand what it means, right? So that is interesting. Another one we have is arithmetic operators. So these are operators that allow some concept or some mathematical concepts to be carried out. And examples of these are, we have the plus, the minus, the multiplication, the division, the exponential, the modular, and so on. What are these things? For example, let's say we have two numbers. So we have let's say number A, right? And let's say it has a value of 9, and we have another number, maybe number 2, and it has a value of 2, right? I mean number B, and it has a value of 2. So we can do this. We can say C is made up of A plus B, which is 9 plus 2. So when we try to print C, so let me try to print C. I'll save and I'll compile. Can you guess what the answer will be? Of course, the answer will be 11, right? So now that is the plus operator. So you under the arithmetic operator, you have the plus, and you can also have the minus, right? So let me say and compile. So can you guess what the answer will be? Of course, 7. So let me launch this. You can see 7. So now let's try the multiplication. So I'll try to multiply and I'll save and compile. You can see I have 18 because 9 times 8 is 18. So now let me try the division. So now there is a problem with the division here, and but let's quickly see this in action. But you should be expecting an whole number, and when I say whole number I mean an integer, and this is because we are saying that we want to divide 9 by 2, which we are expecting a value to be in a decimal form, a float or a double, but we are reassigning it to a variable that is an integer. So that means whatever value that is gotten from this division will be converted into an integer, right? So let me save and compile so that you can visualize what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to explain. So I'll launch this and you can see it is giving us 4 instead of 4.5, right? It is meant to give us 4.5, but it is giving us 4. So now, why is this? I just explained why it's going to give us 4, or why it is giving us 4. And that is because we are dividing this. We are saying 9 divided by 2, which is 4.5, but I'm assigning it to a variable that is of data type integer. So convert whatever value that is coming, convert it to an integer. So that is what it means. So how can I avoid this? So one of the things I can do to avoid this is, since I know that I'm dividing by something, I can specify double. So that is one way. So let's try to see if it is still going to work for us. So you can see now it is still telling me that 4.0. And why? Yes, you can see that there's an improvement compared to when it was giving me an integer value. So there is an improvement, right? But if you want a total change, one of these, maybe the numerator or denominator, must also be a double, must also be in a decimal form, even if you do not necessarily specify a decimal, but it must also be in decimal form so that you have the actual value. So either this is in double or this is in double. So far you know that, okay, you'll be dividing one by the other. So let's quickly save and compile so that we can see that in action. So now you can see it is returning the value as it should be, right? And that is because I'm specifying that I want to, I already know that I'll be dividing this value by this value. So they shouldn't, one of them should at least be in form of a decimal. So that I will be telling my compiler first and that I want to have an operation between a decimal and maybe another decimal or an integer. And this is because my result is most likely going to be in a decimal form, which is a double. So I'm more like preparing my compiler firsthand. So in the case where you're like, but I've assigned my variable to be a double. Yes, you have, but of course we've seen it when we did, it was giving us 4.0. So which is not fair, which is not good enough. So we still need to do this. So this is the option. Or we make sure that all the variable is in form of double. So this will also work, but this is not necessary. At least one of it must be a variable, right? So let's say this is the one that is must be a decimal. So let's assume this is the one that is a decimal. Then let's take this back to 2. Let's save and compile if we are still going to get the same result, right? So I'll save and compile. You can see I'm still getting the same result. So in general, what this tells us is that one of it, when you are dividing one number by the other, one of the variable that is taking part in the division must be in form of a double so that you can get your result in double. So that is that. And let's quickly move on to the next one. There is a function equivalent of this, which is raised to power something. So we are going to look at that later in the future when we are talking about math function. But there is something called modulo. So there is mathematical equivalent for this as well, for modulo, but we are going to talk about that later in the lecture. And what this is going to do is it is going to take in two things. It's going to say this divided by this and what is the remainder. So when you say 9 divided by 2, what is the remainder when you divide 9 by 2, right? So it is going to return the remainder. So when I say modulo this, so this divided by 2, it is going to give, what can you guess what the answer will be? It will be 1, right? And for this as well, we have the mathematical equivalent of this. So we are going to look at that later in the lectures. We are not just limited to this. We can also say, let's say we have a value. Let's say whatever this result is, we want to assign it to an existing variable, maybe existing variable like a, right? So we can do this. We can say we have a variable of a, we have a variable of b, then we want to say a divided by b, and whatever result you get, we assign it to a, right? So this is possible. So we can do this, right? So I can say this, and of course we are going to get 4.0, 4. So now let me launch this. You can see we are getting 4.5. So that means we are still on the right track. So at the same time, what you can do is we can do something. So which is this, a divided by equal b. So this is equivalent. So let me just paste this on the side as a comment. So this is equivalent to saying a divided by b, and whatever value you are getting, reassign it to a. So let me save and I'll compile so that you can see. So still give us the same, right? So just like that, I can also have it in form of this. So I can say a plus b, whatever value you are getting, reassign it to a, right? So that is what this means. So that means I'm trying to print a, right? So and it is going to give us 11, right? So let me launch this. You can see 11, right? So now I can also say a minus b, tell me the value, and reassign. So now reassign the value back to a. So I can do this, right? So this, right? So now we can also have a multiplied by b, and whatever value you are getting, reassign it to a, right? So that is also possible. So that is that. So you might see me using this in later lectures when we are trying to implement, maybe you are trying to work on something, maybe you are trying to work on a project. So just have it at the back of your mind that when you have something like this, what I'm trying to say is that there is a particular variable that have a value of a, that have a value, right? So pick that variable a and do this operation, multiply this value of b by it, then the value, the result that you get, reassign it back to a, right? So more like I do not want to waste memory. I do not want to declare a new variable, so that I won't be, I won't have too much variable. So I want to assign the result. I still want to assign the result to that particular existing variable that is taking part in the operation, especially the one that is on the left hand side, not just, for example, I can say BA, that means what automatically the moment I do this, I'm saying whatever value that you are, whatever result that you are getting when you multiply B by A, now this is now equivalent to B A, you can see the flip. So you're not free to just use any variable. No, no, no. It must be the one on the left hand side. So and you are telling it that okay, when you do this operation, assign the results to back to this variable. So that is what it means. And you're not limited to just numbers, right? Maybe integer, double. No, you're not limited. So you can also do this for maybe a name. So I can say first name. So I can say John, right? So I can also say last name, and I can say Boo, right? So then I can say full name to be first name, right? Plus last name, right? So then I can print this, right? So let me save and I'll compile. Of course, there will be no space between this name. So, but let me save and compile so that you can see that in action. You can see John Boo, right? So to have this space, so I can just add this space, and you can see that the arithmetic operation is also happening, is also possible for a string, right? So I can say before you add these numbers, please add this string, which is an empty space, So when you say this first name plus this empty space, so I want to have a space between them. So I'll save and compile. So I will be say, you can see now it is better, John Boo, right? So that is that. And like I said, you are not limited to numbers. You can also do this for string. You can do this for double, and so on. So another thing we can do is that sometimes you have a number. So let's say you have a number, this, maybe you already have a value, then you can also increment the value by 1. For example, you can say age plus plus. So that means you're trying to say that age equals age plus 1, or you're trying to say age plus equal 1. So this is what you're trying to do when you say a particular variable of an integer or of a double, maybe generally numbers. So you're trying to say increment this value by 1. So when you add plus plus, increment this value by 1. So when I try to print age, what do you think the answer will be? The answer will be 79, right? And that is because I'm telling the compiler that I want to get my age value, then I want to add 1 to it, then I want to reassign it back to this age. And this is what I explained in the last few minutes, which is you have a variable that is already existing, that already have a value, then you add or you do a particular arithmetic operation on it, then the result of that operation, you assign it back to that variable, right? So this is saying I have a particular number that I want to increment by 1. So you can see I already compile, right? So let's see that in action. So you can see now it is 79, right? So, and also you're not limited to just add incrementing. So this is called increment, right? So we are going to see that in action. Also, you can do something called decrement. So you can do this, right? So which is equivalent to saying age equals age minus 1, or saying age minus minus equals 1, you understand. So this is decrement. So that we won't have a conflict, let's just take this out. I'll just remove this totally. So Can you guess what this is going to get us? This is going to get us 77. And that is because we are trying to say age, get the value of age, then take away 1, minus 1, and assign the value back to age. So let me save and compile so that you can see that in action. So you can see we are getting 77, right? So that is another thing you should have at the back of your mind. So even if you do not like this concept as I'm explaining it, or you do not find it interesting, try as much as possible to still know it, because you might when you are writing your own code, you might not use this concept, but you should know them, because when you are reading someone else's code, someone who you are reading his or her code might have implemented these concepts. And if you even if you're not fine with the concept, you're not happy with the concept, you're not the type that use the concept, you still need to understand the concept so that you'll be able to understand the person's code, right? And of course, there's nothing bad here. I think I still find it interesting to use this. In fact, you can't do without using this, because when we talk about loops in the later lecture, we are going to implement this. So I don't think you have any reason not to like this, or you have any reason not to use this. So any concept that you still find hard to understand, just try to take it along. With time, you are going to find it more interesting, and you'll be comfortable with the concept. So that is that on incrementing or decrementing in MQL4. So I'll see you in the next lecture where we talk about relational operators. I'll see you in the next lecture.